One of the positive issues that have come up is that there's been an increased attention to the City Council and how our government works. And I would like us, with your cooperation, to take this opportunity to maybe explain to the people how an item becomes on the agenda, how a citizen can put something on there, and as well as the limitations that you all suffer under the Brown Act in terms of responding to public comment for items that are not on the agenda. It is very appropriate, I feel, that since this is the July 4th weekend and we are celebrating our democracy, and right here, we are at the closest point of democracy to the people. And so if you could just spend a few moments,
Sure.
I would appreciate it, because I've been answering these questions, and it'd be great if you could do it for the record there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burson. I think perhaps I'd ask the city manager to respond to the process that we use to place things on the agenda, and then perhaps the city attorney to briefly talk about how public comment differs from those items on the agenda and what some of the restrictions on council action are relative to public comment items. In broad strokes, if a matter is not on the agenda but brought up during public comment, generally the council cannot act on it because, quite frankly, the public has not been noticed that we might act on it. And so under the Brown Act, and Mr. Labadie will elaborate, we can only refer those types of issues to staff to bring back to us at a future meeting. But perhaps, Mr. Keene, if you could respond briefly on how we place items on the agenda, that would be helpful.
Certainly. Mr. Mayor, Council, there are a variety of ways that items end up on the City Council agenda. Many of them are driven by process, so the things we do, whether it's approvals that go through our planning processes, generally have provisions that require those to come before the City Council. There are a variety of actions that we take to approve contracts and make decisions regarding the spending of the city that are automatically placed before the City Council for approval. From time to time, issues come to our attention, either from other agencies, from members of the public, or from work that the staff has done that we will then bring forward to the City Council and place on the agenda. From time to time, to speak to the specific question of how a resident or a citizen of the city could have an item placed on the agenda, the only way that can happen is to make a request to the city. Typically, these happen through letters or emails or of the sort to the city staff, but they also occasionally occur at a city council meeting, as you referred. Because of the rules of the Brown Act and state law, we're not allowed to simply place items on the agenda on the same night except under very, very limited circumstances. In many cases, we will evaluate a request and determine whether it's appropriate for the City Council to take that item up, or whether there is another process or other agency with jurisdiction that would take that up. But those are the basics.
Thank you, Mr. Keene. Mr. Labadie, the difference between public comment and regular agenda items.
Yeah, generally speaking, the Brown Act requires the City Council to have first an agenda description before it of each item that it plans to discuss or act upon at the meeting. An exception to that is public comment items, where the public can comment on items that are not on the agenda. And the council does have the authority to have a brief discussion of those matters for purposes of either answering questions about it or referring it to staff or asking it to be placed on a future agenda for discussion. As the city manager alluded to, there is a procedure for adding items to the agenda when things have come to the attention of the council after the formal agenda was posted, and there's a need for immediate action. That does require a supermajority vote to do that. And on rare occasions, this council has done that. But generally speaking, the only items that are of business that are discussed or transacted are those that are described in the agenda and for which there is a staff report available to the public, so that the public has an opportunity to understand the basis upon which the staff recommendation was made and has access to the same information that's being presented to the City Council.
Great. Thank you very much for that, those answers, and I hope that answers your questions, Mr. Burson.